and nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
Donald Trump is on a mission to overhaul the United States' existing economic policies. After what the Republican president believes have been decades of economic agendas that have pushed the US further and further back, he's finally taking charge and doing what should have been done in the first place, making America great again.
I want to be the first to congratulate our great, now I can say, Vice President-elect of the United States, J.D.
Of course, Trump isn't fighting the good fight by himself. With J.D. Vance by his side, a whole administration, and even a billionaire to his right, Trump believes the next 4 years will be formative in the history of the nation. They'll change the way the United States operates and is viewed by the rest of the world, all right, but is Trump on a warpath that could potentially destroy the nation's economy? That's what we're here to dissect today. Donald J. Trump's ambitious economic policies versus the harsh realities.
It's going to be only America first. America first.
Domestic policy over international policy. That would be a fair and accurate one-liner that describes the populist theory, America first. The term was first coined by President Woodrow Wilson in 1916 during the onset of the First World War. Woodrow, a Democrat, believed that the United States should maintain a neutral approach to the war, arguing that the nation had its own slew of problems to deal with already. In the 100 years that followed Woodrow's campaign, chanting the term in 1916, and President Donald Trump raising it back from the dead, a lot has changed. There's no imminent threat of war, and the motivation behind America First has gravely changed. When Trump revived the statement in 2016, he believed that the woke mindset had been pushing America to its limits, immigration, trade, and everything else that comes in between. Trump argued that the US had reached its capacity on how much it could give, and it was about time the nation started looking out for itself. To say that America First has been controversial would be putting it mildly. Even back during Woodrow's time, the campaign wasn't appreciated by many First World leaders who believed that the US, a force in global politics and trade, shouldn't stand idle in the sidelines. Likewise, Trump's campaign has faced criticism of its own. A lot of it, actually, with many arguing that America First went from being a populist theory to a fascist one.
We are being taken advantage of. Okay. And I don't like it. And I haven't liked it for many years.
But is that really the case, or is Donald J. Trump simply arguing for American citizens to take charge for themselves for a change? You'll hear a lot of arguments going back and forth between the right and the left. There'll never be an end to it. That being said, the Trump campaign is determined to disprove the liberal agenda, claiming that America First policies will be beneficial for the United States in the long run. How do they plan on furthering their case? Through numbers. Trade would be the first place they'd start. So what are some of America First policies on trade?
My pledge reads, I'm with you, the American people.
Nationalist and non-interventionalist, America First, Trumpism, and making America great again are all synonymous with one another. America First had been the pinnacle of Trump's economic agenda during both his terms. We're specifically talking about the 2024 election campaign, where Trump had promised policies that were designed to prioritize U.S. workers, businesses, and industries over international competition. The Trump's campaign was focused on reducing trade imbalances, protecting American manufacturing, and renegotiating trade deals that the president believed disadvantaged the U.S. economically. Starting with reciprocal tariffs. A tariff is a tax imposed on foreign goods, and the term reciprocal tariffs implies taxes that are imposed in retaliation. Reciprocal tariffs aren't an invention of the Trump campaign, although he did popularize the term during his 2024 election campaign. Here's what Trump has claimed. The United States will impose tariffs reciprocal to the tariffs that are being imposed on them. Say the US export goods with 12% tariffs applied by a nation's government, it would act reciprocally and charge the same 12% on goods that are imported from that nation. Several economic policies triggered Trump's reciprocal tariff announcement, mainly the belief that the United States was paying more than several trading partners. This resulted in the president announcing a minimum of 10% tariffs on goods imported from China and India. He further announced a possible 20% tariff on goods coming in from Canada and Mexico. These tariffs, according to Trump, are subject to change, that change being trading partners lowering their tariffs on the United States. Altogether, the threat of having to pay more would be what puts America first. But let's dissect Trump's reciprocal tariff plan for a moment here. Walmart's CFO, David Rainey, has claimed that the only people who'll get hurt by reciprocal tariffs are American consumers. To understand this, let's take an example. If Walmart, a United States multifunctional corporation, buys a third of its products from China and a reciprocal tariff is imposed on goods coming in from the country, who do you think ends up paying for that tax? The tax is imposed on the US corporation that buys from a country whose goods are being taxed. That is, in this example, Walmart would be the corporation that pays the tax. But wait, why would Walmart eat the added costs? They won't, obviously, and the tax will eventually be translated into the new cost of the product. Now, yes, of course, the Trump administration understood that this was going to happen. However, they're claiming that it's exactly what they'd hoped to happen. So let's dissect why they're happy about it. Walmart would eventually limit the number of goods it buys from China because of the highest cost driving away consumers. Instead, they'd look for local alternatives, therefore driving the US economy. Even if a consumer pays more for a tariffed item, that just means more money circulating in the economy. A win all around, right? Walmart is one example. What about the industries that rely on raw materials from other countries? Does the Trump administration plan on imposing tariffs on raw materials that drive US industries too? Tariffs are intended to protect American jobs and reduce trade deficits, but they risk undermining the very industries they were meant to support.
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%, generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all of the things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way.
US industries rely on imported raw materials such as steel, aluminium, and other key components for manufacturing products. When tariffs are placed on these goods, domestic manufacturers face significantly higher production costs. For example, Trump signed proclamations on February 10, 2025, to impose 25% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminium into the US from all countries without exception, rolling back exemptions for Canada, Mexico, the EU, the UK, Japan, South Korea, and other allied nations. This inevitably raised prices for US companies that rely on these materials. This forced industries like automotive, manufacturing, construction, and aerospace to pay more for essential input, making them less competitive both domestically and internationally. The higher costs are passed along to consumers, raising prices on, well, everything. Experts in the food and beverage industries warn that higher tariffs on steel and aluminium will increase the cost of producing cans in the US. Since many American manufacturers rely on imported raw materials, this price hike would likely be passed on to consumers. The US produces billions of metal cans every year, but it still depends on foreign sources for many raw materials, particularly tin meal steel used for food cans. The tariffs will make it harder for American producers to find affordable supplies, especially since domestic production of steel and aluminium is limited. Experts say this will push up prices and could even cause shortages. Businesses are uncertain about the future. Small companies are particularly concerned about supply chain disruptions and price increases. Larger companies, on the other hand, have already warned that the cost of cans might rise, and they might switch to plastic bottles as a cheaper alternative, which could have negative environmental impacts. While intended as leverage, such tariffs risk significant economic repercussions. Imposing high tariffs could disrupt supply chains, increase costs for American consumers, and provoke retaliatory measures, potentially harming industries that rely on trade.
All right, and that's a very big one that Howard just read, but they're both big. They're all big. We're only doing big ones. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
In the end, it's consumers who will feel the pinch as food and beverage prices increase, with families paying more for essential goods. The tariffs, designed to protect U.S. industries, could have the opposite effect, hurting American business and shoppers alike. They've already hurt anyone invested in the stock market, with investors shifting billions from the US into other markets. In fact, last year, a Bank of America survey of ultra-high net worth individuals learned something surprising. By 2026, these investors could be devoting approximately 11% of their portfolios to fine art and collectibles. Tariffs will have their own impact on the market. But art has historically been an asset class celebrated for its lack of correlation to other popular assets for the last 3 decades. With 2 blockbuster art auctions occurring alongside the S&P 500's worst day in 3 years. Luckily, diversifying part of your own portfolio into art is easy with Masterworks, today's sponsor. Masterworks platform has over $1 billion of invested capital from 65,000 plus investors, with previous art offerings featuring legends like Picasso and Banksy. Each of Masterworks' 23 exits has been profitable, distributing back over $60 million to investors, including principal. Investors who didn't need millions or art expertise. While I'm not a Masterworks investor, for EconomyTalk subscribers, you can get priority access with the QR code on screen, the link in the description, or at masterworks.art/EconomyTalk. Moving on to another one of Trump's policies, arguably the most sensational one, let's dissect how the 47th President of the United States believes that feuding with Mexico might actually save the US economy. We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. The trade war against China had been in place for several years, with Joe Biden, the 46th president, also imposing tariffs on goods imported from the country in an effort to win the trade war. However, the Trump administration believes economic policies should be indiscriminate. After much speculation, Donald Trump announced that goods coming in from Mexico will be taxed at 20%. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, on the other hand, has remained confident that her administration would reach agreements with the US government before the deadline set by Trump. We would need to be reaching important agreements this Friday. On all of the issues, there is communication, and what we need is to complete this agreement. I believe we're in a place to do it. Before we move on with this discussion, we have to address the elephant in the room, the US-Mexico border wall.
Anyone who has entered the United States illegally is subject to deportation.
Central to the Trump administration's argument is the belief that a border wall would curb illegal immigration, thereby protecting American jobs and wages. By enforcing stricter immigration laws, the administration aims to reduce the influx of unauthorized workers, which they claim depresses wages and increases competition for employment among the U.S. citizens. The White House stated that enforcing immigration laws helps protect American workers and taxpayers against job loss and misuse of the welfare system. But is that really the case? This perspective doesn't fully consider the economic contributions of immigrants. Immigrants often take on jobs that are less desirable to native-born workers and are integral to sectors like agriculture, construction, and services. Reducing the number of these workers could lead to labor shortages, potentially increasing production costs and consumer prices. The president's assertion that Mexico should be the one paying for the US-Mexico border wall was one of his most famous and equally controversial campaign promises. From the moment Trump announced his presidential bid for the first time in 2015 to becoming president for the second time around, Donald Trump repeatedly declared that Mexico would fund the wall. Why? Trump argued that illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and crime spilling into the U.S. from Mexico placed a financial burden on American taxpayers. By his logic, since Mexico was the primary source of these issues, it should bear the cost of preventing them. Trump also claimed that Mexico had been taking advantage of the U.S. through trade deficits and weak border enforcement, suggesting that forcing Mexico to pay for the wall was a way to correct these imbalances. Over time, he shifted his argument, stating that renegotiating trade deals like the USMCA or imposing tariffs on Mexican goods would indirectly make Mexico cover the costs. Trump estimated that building a beautiful wall along the southern border would cost between $8 billion and $12 billion. As of 2020, the federal government had allocated approximately $15 billion for the border wall's construction. Notably, the per-mile cost of the wall has also risen sharply. A decade ago, expenses were around $6 million per mile. Recent reports indicate costs have escalated to approximately $25 million per mile. Of course, Mexican political leaders have denied that they'd ever be the ones to foot the bill for the massive project.
Thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
July 2024. While Trump was giving a speech near Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas Matthew Crooks fired shots into a Trump rally from an elevated position outside the venue. The future president of the United States was injured, bleeding from his left ear, but otherwise safe from major harm. Naturally, several world leaders reached out to condemn the attack and voice their support for the future president's speedy recovery. Of course, at the time, they didn't really know Trump would be the future president. One man, however, believed that this was a sign that becoming the next leader of America was Trump's calling, and that would be a billionaire space enthusiast, Elon Musk. February 2025. Elon Musk is serving as a senior advisor focusing on enhancing government efficiency. He leads the Department of Government Efficiency, established by executive order in January 2025. However, Musk is officially designated as a special government employee, a position intended for short-term, specialized expertise. What does Musk have to say about Trump's economic policies? For starters, he's ready to stand by the president through thick and thin, believing that every one of his policies holds merit and should be seen through for the betterment of the United States economy. Critics argue that Musk may be leveraging his government position to benefit his private enterprises. For instance, Starlink, Musk's satellite internet company, is reportedly poised to secure a $2 billion federal contract to modernize the U.S. air traffic communications system, a move that has drawn scrutiny due to Musk's government ties.
X, are you okay? This is X, and he's a great guy, high IQ. He's a high IQ individual.
And that's where we're at now. Donald Trump has assumed office for the second and probably last time around. He's determined to bring about a revolutionary change in the U.S. economic policies. But could he be short-sighted in his goals? And are his advisors only looking out for themselves?